So anyway, if you would, please, Rebbiton, read at least 12 verses of the Torah Parsha so that no tribe gets left behind.
All right, this is Parsha 47, Re'eh, C is what it means. Deuteronomy 11:26 through 16:17. And we'll start in 26. See, I am putting before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing when you obey the commands of Yahweh your Elohim, which I command you today. And the curse if you do not obey the commands of Yahweh your Elohim, but turn aside from the way which I command you today and go after other mighty ones which you have not known. And it shall be when Yahweh your Elohim has brought you into the land which you go to possess, that you shall put the blessing on Mount Gershom and the curse on Mount Ebal. Are they not beyond the Jordan, following the way of the sun westward to the land of the Canaanites, who dwell in the desert plain opposite Gilgal, beside the tabernacle tree of Moreh? For you are passing over the Jordan to go in and possess the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, and you shall possess it and dwell in it, and shall guard to do all the laws and right rulings which I am putting before you today. These are the laws and the right rulings which you guard to do in the land which Yahweh Elohim of your fathers is giving you to possess all the days that you live on the land. Completely destroy all the places where the nations which you are depossessing serve their mighty ones, on the high mountains and on the hills and under every green tree. And you shall break down their altars and destroy their pillars and burn their ashram with fire. And you shall cut down the carved images of their mighty ones and shall destroy their names out of that place. Do not do so to Yahweh your Elohim, but seek the place which Yahweh your Elohim chooses out of all your tribes to put his name there for his dwelling place, and there you shall enter.
Abba Yahweh, we love you today, Father. We thank you so much for allowing us to be in your house on your appointed day, at your appointed time. Father, we just ask that you would touch our hearts and our minds, that we would be able to receive your word today. Father, that we would receive the things that you would have for us out of them. Father, we ask that these words would take root downward, bear fruit upward. Father, that we could see growth and forward movement in our lives. Father, I ask that you just touch each and every one of us, all of those who are here in the room, at the house, those that are in the room on the internet, and Father, those that are not here today, but we know that they should be. Father, we just ask that you would touch them and help strengthen them through whatever they're going through right now. Abba, I just ask that you would touch my heart and my mind and my words, that I would be able to bring to your people what you would have them here today. And Father, that we could keep in mind your precious son, Yahushua, and Father, that we could keep him at the forefront of everything that we do. Abba, we love you and appreciate you. And we give you all the praise and all the glory in Yahushua's name. Amen. All right. So, as Ribbiton said, the Parsha today is called Re'eh, which a lot of times means to see. In this case, it means to behold. So what he's saying is, hey, take this in. All right. Pay attention to what I'm telling you. All right. Now, we got to remember we're getting towards the end of this thing for Moshe, and he's, for the past few weeks, he's been going, over and over and over again, kind of reminding them, reiterating things. Hey, do this, don't do that. And sometimes that's how we are. We have to do the same thing with our kids. We got to tell them, hey, don't do that. I told you don't do that. I forgot. We all have very, very short memories. And, the children of Israel, of course, they were no different. But at this time, Moses he's going back over a bunch of things, because he's fixing to go off the scene. And Joshua is going to have to take over, right? And this is going to kind of be like a quick tutorial for Joshua. Now, he had been working alongside Moshe, but Joshua was no Moshe. Okay. I mean, he wasn't, Joshua didn't talk face to face with Yahweh like Moses did. Joshua wasn't the same, he wasn't cut from the same cloth, shall we say, as Moses was. Okay. So Joshua had a little bit harder because I don't think he was the man that Moses was. So anyway, let's read verse 26 again.
All right, verse 26. See, I am putting before you today a blessing and a curse.
So this is what y'all was saying. I'm putting before you a blessing and a curse, right? We've talked a lot these past couple of weeks about having to make choices, right? When we wake up every day, we have to make a choice. Do we walk this thing out or do we do what we want to do? Right? So that's what he's saying. I'm putting before you this day, right now. All right. That's why he said, pay attention. I'm putting before you a blessing and a curse. Right? But here's the thing that we have to remember is that Yahweh is faithful over both of them. Okay. I looked for that particular scripture, but I couldn't find it. I don't know if I'm not using the correct words, but you know, the scriptures tell us, sir. Okay. If y'all could see if you could find it for me, that'd be great because I couldn't find it. But the thing that we have to remember is that he is faithful over both of those things. If he says, you know, if he says that he's going to bring a blessing, he's going to bring a blessing. But we also have to remember that if he says he's bringing a curse, he's bringing a curse. All right. He has both of those things and he will use them accordingly. Think about it. When Israel was in the wilderness and they did the right thing, nobody could stand before him. But when they didn't do the right thing, what happened? He would bring in an enemy. He'd bring in a plague. He'd bring in flaming snakes. He'd bring in whatever he needed to bring in to kind of, you know, get their attention. You know, it's like sometimes you have to, you know, as parents, sometimes we got to kind of tune our kids up to get their attention. I'm not playing with you. I'm your parent. And I told you, don't do this. And you defied me and you went ahead and did it. So now you got to pay the consequences. Well, it's the same thing. The Father has both of those things. And as parents, we have the power to bless our children and we have the power to curse them as well. Okay. And what I'm talking about is we have the power to pat them on the head and tell them, hey, you're doing a great job. Or we have the power to whoop their rump, right? That's how, you know, that's a blessing and a curse. I remember thinking when I was a kid that the whoopings was a curse. I remember that, but you know, they actually turn out to be blessings in disguise when you get a little older. Did you find that, Rebbe? Okay, Jeremiah 31 and 28. Rebbe said it's not exactly what I'm looking for, but it's close. Find it.
Jeremiah 31 and 28. And it shall come to pass that, like as I have watched over them to pluck up and to break down and to throw down and to destroy and to afflict, so will I watch over them to build and to plant, saith Yahweh.
So it's the same kind of a thing, same principle. Okay, he can do both of those things. He can do bad stuff and he can do good stuff, right? Remember, he also says that, you know, that he made light, right? He creates light and darkness, right? He brings peace, you know, and evil. I do all these things. So before you tell me, oh no, God can't do that. Yes, he can. He said he does it, right? He said, I, Yahweh, do all these things. Okay. So he can do that. And he will use those things as a way to get our attention, right? And he does it according to how we walk this thing out. All right, let's go to Revelations 22 and 12. See what Yahushua says here.
Revelations 22, verse 12. And behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me to give every man according as his work shall be.
Okay, to give to every man according as his work shall be. So the thing is, when he comes and brings his reward, Are we going to get a good one? Are we going to get a bad one? Are we going to get a good, are we going to get a blessing? Are we going to get a curse? Do you see what I'm saying? The principle is there. All right. So it's up to us because he's got both of those things. He got a box full of blessings and a box full of curses. Which one he pulls out of for you depends on you. All right. It doesn't depend on me, and it doesn't depend on Rebbe, and it doesn't depend on you. It depends on what you do. All right. And that's what he's trying to tell him. Verse 27, please.
The blessing when you obey the commands of Yahweh your Elohim, which I command you today.
So here's what he's saying. Look, you're going to get a blessing if you obey the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, which I command you this day. All right. And why would they get a blessing if they walked them out? A, because it's what he said to do. B, because what did Yahushua say in John 14 and 15? If you love me, keep my commandments. So if we walk his commandments out, that shows him that we love him. And he will bless us for doing what's right, for loving him, for, walking it out in front of men. Right? But walking it out every day. There's a blessing for us if we walk his commandments out. All right. And we've seen the pattern. We've seen the pictures plenty of times in the scriptures, right? Several places where every time that they did what they were supposed to do, the Father came through for them, right? Whether it was a battle or they needed something or there was illness in the camp or there was whatever, anytime that stuff showed up, as long as they were long as they were doing what he said to do, right? Long as they were walking it out, he was there for them. But you remember when they tried to do things on their own? When they tried to do things on their own way? All right. When they did that, what happened? All right. He told them, you better not go up. You better not go do what you want to do. Right. You better not try to go against what I said. Because if you do that, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Right. And then you're going to get the two whoopings, right? Because you're in the wrong place and you're doing the wrong thing. What you got, Rebbe? Jeremiah 44 and 27. Good morning. Shabbat shalom. Come on in and have a seat.
Jeremiah 44 and 27. Behold, I watch over them for evil and not for good. And all the men of Judah that are in the land of Egypt shall be consumed by the sword and by the flame until there be an end of them.
Okay. So like I said, we got to remember that when we are walking in his commandments, that there is a blessing for us. But when we walk contrary to his commandments, there is a curse waiting as well. Okay. And like I said, they were completely unstoppable. They were unstoppable when they walked upright. Okay, let's go to Devarim or Deuteronomy 1 and 30. Sister, if you're looking for head coverings, they're hanging on the wall. I'm Shane. This is Rabbi Jimmy. Good to have you with us today.
Deuteronomy 1 and 30. Yahweh your Elohim, which goeth before you, he shall fight for you, according to all that he did for you in Egypt before your eyes.
Okay. So like I said, when we walk in his commandments, he will go before us. Okay. He will walk before us and he will take care of our problems, take care of our enemies. All right. It says just make yourself at home. And like I said, if you have any questions for us, we're here. Oh, no, that's fine. Mm-hmm. Sure, sure. No, welcome. We're glad to have you here. Okay, so let's read verse 28, please.
All right, Deuteronomy 11, verse 28. And the curse if you do not obey the commands of Yahweh your Elohim, but turn aside from the way which I command you today to go after other mighty ones which you have not known.
Okay, so just like we talked about, if we walk in his way, that there are blessings. If we walk contrary to that, there are not blessings. Okay, there are curses, right? So we have to remember that there is always, I've said it before and I'll say it again, there's always a price to pay, right? For when we walk contrary to what the scriptures say. Okay, when we walk contrary, there is always a price to pay. We have to know that when we are walking every day that we walk, we need to be walking out his word. Okay, because when we don't, then we're not putting forth the image that we need to put forth, right? We're not putting forth the the picture that he wants to see, right? And maybe we're not putting forth the picture that other people need to see, right? So we need to make sure that if we say that we're walking after him, that we need to walk just like he walked, right? So it says in First John, it says that if we say that we follow him, then we ought to walk just the same way that he walked. Okay. So if we say that we walk it out, but we're following a different pattern than what he had or what he did, then we're not walking it out. It's very simple. It's very simple. All right, verses 31 through 32, please.
For you are passing over the Jordan today.
Oh, I'm sorry. Verse 29. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Verse 29.
And it shall be when Yahweh your Elohim has brought you into the land which you go to possess, that you shall put the blessing on Mount Gershom and the curse on Mount Ebal.
All right. So we've got two mountains here, right? And he said that when you go, that you're going to put the blessing on Mount Gerizim, all right? And that you're going to put the curses on Mount Ebal. All right. So the word Gerizim, it means rocky or craggy. It can even mean cut off, right? Kind of cut off from civilization. Not cut off in the way like if you do something wrong, you know what I mean? But kind of cut off from the rest of civilization. And the idea here is that the blessing comes when we walk this craggy path. It's not easy, right? When we walk this every day, when we do this, we're going against what the world thinks. We're going against what the church thinks. We're going against what our families think, right? We have gone, you know, how many of us have lost friends and family because of the word? It's not an easy way. You ever tried to walk in like gravel and so, you know what I mean? Sometimes it's not so easy. And that's what he's trying to tell us here. The blessing comes when we walk this difficult path. Okay. When we walk this difficult path, there's a reward to be received from it. Because if everything was easy, there's no effort to be made, right? So, like I said, the blessing comes from being kind of outside, being kind of cut off from the mainstream, being kind of, being set apart. Exactly, right? The word kadosh, right? To be set apart, to be set aside for a particular reason, okay, for a particular purpose. So we also see that he says that the curses are on Mount Ebal. All right. So the word Ebal means it means bald. Okay. It can mean smooth or bare. Okay. So why would the curses be on the smooth mountain? Again, because in order to get a good reward, there's no effort here. All right. There's no effort. And a lot of people think that you just go down and you know, there are some you know, there are some uh sects of the church that believe that when you go up and shake the preacher's hand, then you're saved and you can't, nothing's going to happen and you can just live however you want to and you can just go along your, well, it doesn't work like that. That's this easy way. There's nothing to gain from that. It's like what we talk about. If you go to the gym and you just always lift 5 pounds, right? Are you ever going to get any stronger? Not really, if you only ever lift 5 pounds, right? So you've got to put some more weight on there. You've got to make the way a little tougher to get a benefit from it. Okay. And that's how it is. Let's go to Isaiah 30, verses 9 and 10, please.
Isaiah 30, verses 9 and 10. That this is a rebellious people, lying children, children that will not hear the law of Yahweh, which say to the seers, see not, and to the prophet, prophesy not unto us right things, speak unto us smooth things, prophesy deceit.
You hear that? You see that? He said, don't give us right things. Don't give us, we don't want to hear the things that are correct because they're too hard. Give us smooth things. Give us things that we can just gloss over, right? It's like baby food. You know what I'm saying? Give us things we don't have to chew. We can just suck it right down. We're good to go, right? So that's what they said. They said, we don't want the right things because they're too hard. So give us the easy stuff. But again, if I go to the gym and I only ever lift 5 pounds, I'm never going to get any stronger. I've got to try some things that are harder and more difficult, right? And through those trials and those difficulties, I'm going to become stronger. And pretty soon, maybe I'm doing 10 pounds, maybe I'm doing 20, maybe I'm doing 50. One day I'm going to get up to 100. You know what I'm saying? But I'm going to get stronger and I'm going to get better. And it's the same thing with our walk, you know? But that's why, you know, like I said, I thought it was very interesting that they said, don't give us right things. We want smooth things. And the curses come from where? From the smooth things, right? Because it says that these are rebellious children. These are children that don't want to do the right thing, right? They tell the prophets, they say, don't give us the right stuff. Give us stuff that's easy. And we'll be happy with that and we'll go on our merry way. You know? And that's not where the blessing comes from. All right. Now I'll go to verses 31 and 32.
For you are passing over the Jordan to go in to possess the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, and you shall possess it and dwell in it, and shall guard to do all the laws and right rulings which I am putting before you today.
Okay, so here's the thing. He said, you're about to go into this new place. You're going to go into this new land. I'm putting you here. All right. So what we need to remember is that we're supposed to follow his commandments wherever we're at, wherever we are, whether we're at home or whether we're at work or whether we're at the store or whether we're on vacation or whatever. We're supposed to follow his commandments regardless of where we are. Let me ask you a question. When do you, Tommy, when do you ever stop loving Vicky? Never. All right. I never stopped loving Kim. Right. Rebbe and Rebbitzin, you guys don't stop loving each other, regardless of where you're at. Right. So the point is, if I love him, I'm to keep his commandments. Right. And it doesn't matter where I am, what I'm doing, who's around, right? When you continue to do the right thing, regardless of the place you're at or the people you're around, that is called having character, right? You do the right thing, whether or not it's going to make this person say, "Oh, that's some weird stuff that you continue to do the right thing." That's called having character. And we're all supposed to be that way. So here's the thing. If we never stop loving our spouses, regardless of who we're around, then we should never stop loving our Savior, regardless of who we're around or where we're at or what day of the week it is. There's a lot of people that go to service, right? They may go on Shabbat. They may go on the first day of the week, whatever. There are people who do that, but that's the only place that you see them praising or thanking the Father. The thing is, we're supposed to be the same way, regardless of where we are, who we're with, what we're doing. Okay? As he said, if you love me, keep my commandments. So that's what I'm saying. That's how we show him that we love him. And if I'm not following his commandments the other 6 days of the week, how am I showing that I love him? I'm not, right? So therefore, that's why he's telling the children of Israel, he's saying, you guys, it doesn't matter where you go. Wherever he puts you, you need to follow these commandments. You need to do the right thing. Okay? All right, let's go to chapter 12, verses 1 through 4, please.
Deuteronomy chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. These are the laws and the right rulings which you guard to do in the land which Yahweh Elohim of your fathers is giving you to possess all the days that you live on the land. Completely destroy all the places which the nations which you are dispossessing serve their mighty ones on the high mountains and on the hills under every green tree. And you shall break down their altars, destroy their pillars, burn their asherim with fire, and you shall cut down the carved images of their mighty ones, and shall destroy their name out of that place. Do not do so to Yahweh your Elohim.
Okay, so what I'm getting from this is that if we follow his commandments, there's no room for anything else. Okay? So we know back in earlier in the scriptures, he talked about don't take your garment and make a garment with diverse fabrics, right? Don't put wool and linen in the same garment. Okay? He said, don't sow your field with diverse kinds of seeds, right? Don't plow your field with an ox and a donkey at the same time because they're pulling at different rates. See, that's what do we call that? We call that shadnez, right? Shadnez is unequal mixing or unlawful mixing, okay? And if you try to take his commandments and you try to mix it with other stuff, right? Then you've got a perverted version of what he wants. All right? We're not supposed to take our worship and mingle, right? In Hebrew, the word is ma'arav, all right? We're not supposed to take our worship or our service and mingle it with those of the world or other beliefs. They call that syncretism, right? And the problem is 9 times out of 10, if you go into a church, you're going to see things that you could see right there on the street in the church building, right? If you go into the synagogue, you're not safe there either because you're going to, you can see things from off the street or things or out in the world, whatever. But that's what we're not supposed to be mingling these things, mixing them. All right. What he did say in, let's see, verse 3, he says that we are to overthrow the altars, break the statues, burn the sacred poles with fire, hew down graven images of their idols, and destroy the names of them from out of that place. We are to destroy or to erase. Think about it. We are to erase those things from our lives. So if we have idols in our lives, we are to destroy them. If we have junk that we've pulled in from the world in our lives, we need to erase it. We need to destroy it. If we have thought patterns that we've carried over from another belief system and mingled it into our own, we are to destroy that, because that is not his word. Does this make sense? Okay. However, we're not to do that to the things of Yahweh. We don't change. He doesn't change. So we don't try to change his word. Right? Yahushua is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So we don't try to change what he said. Those are the things we're supposed to put in our hearts. Those are the things that we're supposed to have in our lives. Okay? And when we have those things inside, those are the things that we hold on to. Because you can't worship Yahweh and have the things of Yahweh in your life and have these other things from outside in your life at the same time. They don't work together. Okay? They don't work together. All right? And that's what it says here in verse 4. It says, you shall not do so unto Yahweh your Elohim. Okay? So that's the thing. We got to get rid of all this other stuff, because he said that he's not going to share his glory with another. And he said, and beside me, there is none else. And he don't want to see he don't want to see other Elohim before his face. So if we've got that stuff in us, we got to destroy it. So we take a lot of the things out of the scriptures for granted, right? Because of the concept of grace. But what we have to understand is what we were taught is not what it is, not what it was. So we don't understand what we have this skewed concept of what grace is, right? Comes from the word chen, which means favor, right? But it's a special kind of favor. It's unmerited. We didn't do anything to deserve it. All right? And he doesn't owe us anything. All right? He doesn't owe us a thing at all. We owe him everything. But the fact is, how can we repay him if we're taking his things and polluting them with something else? Right? It's watered down. It's diluted. It's not what it was meant to be. His things are to stay full strength, right? Not watered down with anything else, not changed to suit us, right? You should say, let your yes be yes and your no be no, right? He's the same way. If he says, don't do this, he means don't do it. If he says do this, he means do it. Pretty simple. But we spiritualize everything, and we Oh, well, I interpret it this way. Oh, I interpret it that way. Well, there's as many interpretations in this world for scriptures as there is people with elbows. You know what I'm saying? So that's why we let the scriptures interpret themselves. All right. We let the scriptures interpret themselves. All right. Verse 8, please.
Deuteronomy 12 and 8. Do not do all that we do here today, each one whatever is right in his own eye.
Okay. So it says that you shall not do after all the things that we do here this day. Every man whatsoever is it right in his own eyes. Because there was a time when they just kind of did what they did. You know what I mean? And the scriptures tells us that at one time Yahweh winked at sin, but no more. No more. Okay? He doesn't just let it slide anymore. All right? We are supposed to follow, and this kind of goes back with what we're supposed to follow what the word says, not what is right or what seems right in our own eyes. Okay? What's Proverbs 16 and 25 say? It says, there's a way that seems right unto a man, but the end thereof is death. Okay? So there's a way that seems right to us, but that's not the right way to do things. The right way to do them is the way that the Father set them down. Okay? So, Brother Shane, what are you telling me? What I'm telling you is that we cannot justify, and big air quotes, great big air quotes around the word justify. We cannot justify sin and it automatically, and then it becomes acceptable to the Father. We can't do that. We don't have the power to. It's just like I can't take a pork chop and pray over it and make it acceptable. I can't take a lobster and pray over it and make it acceptable. Right? You cannot do that. All right? The scriptures say, remember Balaam? He said, you can't bless what Yahweh's cursed and you can't curse what Yahweh has blessed. So the point is, it's the same today as it was, right? Ecclesiastes said there's nothing new under the sun, right? So if it was cursed back in the day, you can't take it today and make it okay. All right? You can't go to the luau and put your hands over the pig and say, ham, ham, now you're lamb, and boom, now it's something that you can eat. That doesn't work like that. He said it from the beginning, right? This, and we're going to talk about it here in chapter 14. He said, these are the things which you can eat, and these are the things that you don't eat. And there's one particular verse in there. It's verse number 8, and we're going to talk about that, right? But he says, the swine, even though it has a split hoof, it does not chew the cud. Therefore, it is not food for you. How much simpler does it get than that? He said, don't do it. Right? And I know people want to go to Acts chapter 10 and talk, oh, well, he said what I've cleansed, don't call common, blah, 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 blah. That had nothing to do with food whatsoever. Nothing. Okay? The only reason why Peter saw it as food was because he was hungry. And the scriptures go to tell us he went up on the rooftop and he was hungry. And so, the Father chose that way to speak to him. But we see 2 times in that very same chapter where he says, now I understand, right, that he's no respecter of persons. And it's because of the viewpoint that was held of of goyim, non-believers, people from other countries. And okay, that's how they felt. So that's how they saw them. But Peter, Kepha goes and says it twice. Now I know that he is no respecter of persons. And in every nation, right? In every nation, I guess you could even see that as a third one. But in every nation where he is feared, they're accepted. So when people tell you, oh, he made all the food clean, well, here's the problem. Those things, dogs and cats and shrimps and pigs, and that stuff was never food to begin with. Never, right? It was never food to begin with. So how did it just mystically become food? It didn't. It's because our flesh man wants that stuff. Okay? Or did at one point. Did at one point. When I was young, bless you, I'm away from it now, but when I was young, yeah, we ate all that stuff because I didn't know any better. But when I go to the word and it says, this is what you eat, this is what you do not eat, how am I going to argue with him? Well, I like it. Well, I don't care whether you like it. It's just like a parent. They tell their children. Sometimes we tell our kids things that they don't like, but it's to help them. It's to make them better. Sometimes we have to discipline them. And it's not because you want to, but because they need it to become good people and to use their brains. You know what I mean? To think. So let's remember, we can't take something that we want and make it okay. It does not work like that. He wrote the book. He has the final say in everything. When you stand before, are you going to stand before me? No. So my opinion doesn't matter. Brother Tommy, I'm not going to stand before you. Right? Yeah, it's a good thing. I think so. It's a good thing because I don't have all the smarts. You know what I'm saying? But my point is, so it doesn't matter what my opinion is. What matters is what his word says. And this is what we stand on. Right? Okay. Can I get an amen on that? All right. That's what we stand on, is what this word says. And if the word says it's right, it's right. If the word says it's wrong, it's wrong. That's it. End of discussion. Because it says when we stand before him, he's going to open up the books. And where are we going to be judged from? What's up here? No, we're going to be judged by what's in the word. And that's what we need to remember. That is why it is important that we walk this out every day. Get it in you. Digest this. Become pregnant on the word. Get it in you. Because this is what we're going to get judged out of. Not what I think. Or what Kim thinks. Or what Alicia thinks. That's not what we're going to be judged by. The scriptures say that he opened up the books, and those that were judged by those things in them. So we need to make sure that we're in the Lamb's book of life. Okay? We need to make sure that that's where, and the only way we get in there is by doing what? Keeping his commandments. Do you see how this works? It's so simple. But why does it seem so hard? Why does it seem so hard? Because we want to do what we want to do. That's why. But it's not difficult. If we have a question, what do? We go to the word. What does the Bible say? What does it say about this? Can I do this? Can I not do this? And regardless of whether it hurts our feelings or not, we say, well, okay, I guess I can't do that. So we don't. Okay. All right. Get down off my soapbox. Go to verse 12, please.
And you shall rejoice before Yahweh your Elohim, you and your sons and your daughters and your male servants and your female servants, and the Levite who is within your gate, since he has no portion or inheritance with you.
Okay, let's go to Psalm 104, please. Psalm 104, verse 4. Sorry. I should have been a little clearer. My apologies.
Psalms 100, verse 4. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving, into his courts with praise. Be thankful unto him and bless his name.
Okay, so the scriptures tell us that when we enter into his courts, we're supposed to enter in with what? With thanksgiving and praise, right? All right. So what he said here was, you shall rejoice before Yahweh your Elohim, you and your sons and your daughters and your men servants and your maid servants and the Levite that's within your gates. So what I want you to know is that I know sometimes, especially in the fall, because when the fall feasts come, it's kind of like one right after the other, right? It's just like boom, 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 boom. You've got all these feasts just in a row. And sometimes it's because there's a lot of planning that has to be done. Sometimes there's food to be made, and there's work to be done, and there's tents to be put up, and there's all of these things. And sometimes it can seem a little overwhelming. But what we need to remember is the scriptures tell us that he gave us appointed days, feast days, for what? For joy and for consolation and for rest and for happiness. And he gave us these feast days for these things. So when his feasts come around, we need to be thankful for them. Because not only are they days of celebration, but remember, each one of these feasts that we celebrate, every one of them is an aspect or a picture of our Savior. Every one is a picture or an aspect of our Messiah, Moshiach, right? So every one of these things is a picture of him. And we, as a people, should feel privileged to be able to take part in them. Okay? We get to take part in the same things that Moshe did, and Joshua, and the prophets, right? David, King David, right? Moshiach himself. We get to take part in all of those things. We should be joyful for that and not look at them as a burden. That's right. There are some people that look at oh man, we got to do this and we got to do that, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's a lot of work. But we need to see them as reasons to celebrate and not a chore to be griped about, right? Because what does the Father not like? What's the number one thing he doesn't like? He does not like murmuring and complaining, right? What were you going to say? Yeah, he does not like murmuring and complaining. So the point is, let's be happy. Let's celebrate. Let's rejoice, right? Let's shout. Let's be excited for, think about it. When we're at Sukkot, we've got 8 days of separation from the world. And it's just us, our friends and our family, and it's the circle. And we don't have outside interference, right? Don't think for 1 second that I'm bringing my laptop with me to Sukkot, because I told them, when I take this vacation, you ain't going to get in touch with me. This is my time. I ask for 8 days out of the entire year. This is my time. And you ain't going to get a hold of me. You won't find me. So that's the thing. Let's look at those as reasons to celebrate and not as a bunch of work. Because, yeah, it's hot. It is hot, y'all. Well, I'm talking about right now. And if it's hot now, the closer we get to Sukkot, it's still going to be pretty warm, right? Sukkot's at the end of September this year, right? So it's still going to be pretty warm. So, yeah, we're going to be warm. But he's given us a great breezeway to sit under. He's given us shade. He's, all of these things. So, again, let's look at, and we've got each other. That's wonderful. We always find great things to do during Sukkot, don't we? And we enjoy each other's company. So, like I said, let's keep that, right? We're supposed to enter his gates with thanksgiving. We're supposed to enter his courts with praise. Thank you for giving me, thank you for giving me another week and another opportunity to celebrate your Shabbat. Thank you for that. Bless you, Abba. You kept me safe this week. Do you know at the place that I work, we've had 3 people in the past 2 weeks that have been damaged by caustic substances. We had one guy got sprayed in the face with sulfuric acid. Okay. He's okay. He did get some in his eyes, but he's okay. They neutralized it. But the point is, that could have just as well been any of us. I saw a traffic accident on my way to work the other day. Father, please help those people in that car wreck. That could have been me in that wreck. You see what I'm saying? There's always something or some place that we could have been where we may have been injured or killed. So we need to be thankful. He's given us every day we wake up. He's given us another day to live. He's letting us breathe and live and spend another day with our kids or our mothers and fathers or our family, whatever. This is why I talk so much about gratitude. We have got to be thankful for the things that he gives us, no matter how mundane they seem, no matter how small they seem. Right? Remember the voice? Was it Jeremiah? He said that it wasn't in the whirlwind. It wasn't in the earthquake. Wasn't in the fire. It wasn't in the wind. It was the still small voice. Scriptures also say, do not despise the day of small things. Don't despise the day of small things. Because a lot of times that's how he does it. It's like we talk about crumbs, right? If you got a loaf of bread or you got a bunch of crumbs, you can take them crumbs and push them together and you get a whole nother piece of bread. So like I said, let's be thankful for the small things. Verse 13 says, take heed to yourself that you do not offer your burnt offerings in every place that you see. Here's what I want you to know. That the Sabbath is the very first of our feasts, right? This is the Sabbath, the Shabbat is a weekly feast. It is a weekly holiday. All right. What makes it a holiday different from any other day? You don't do the same things on a holiday that you do on other days, right? Okay. Shabbat is a special day. And the Sabbath, I wish I could get people to understand this. The Sabbath is not a day that we choose ourselves, and it is not a day that we choose that is convenient. Right? The Sabbath, right? The word Sheva, 7, It is the seventh day. It's not a day that we say, oh, well, I've got plans for Saturday, so maybe I'm going to have Sabbath on Thursday this week. You can't do that. You can't do that, okay? So again, let's remember, Sabbath is the seventh day, and it is not a day that we have chosen, and it's not a day that we've, it's like I knew some people that were going to celebrate Passover one time. And I asked them, I said, oh, well, and I think that week it was on a Thursday or something. And they said, oh, no, we're going to do it on Sunday. And I said, why? And they told me, I said, well, because it's more convenient and everybody can meet. Well, then you're not celebrating Passover. You know what I mean? So we have to make sure that if we say that we are celebrating Sabbath, we need to be celebrating it on the correct day. On the correct day. Okay. Verse 15 says, notwithstanding, you may kill and eat flesh in all your gates, whatsoever your soul desires after, according to the blessing of Yahweh your Elohim, which he has given you. The unclean and the clean may eat thereof, as of the roebuck and as of the hart. Okay, so listen to me, because this trips people up. This trips people up. He is not saying that you may eat of the unclean and the clean alike. He's talking about the people who eat the food can be either clean or unclean, right? But the hart, the deer, and the roebuck, right? Those are clean animals. So he's not saying that you can eat clean and unclean alike, right? Again, the way that this is worded, it has a tendency to trip people up. What he's saying is, say a person had an illness, or a person had just buried a parent, or a person had inadvertently touched a grave or something. Well, they would have been ritually unclean at the time. But what the Father is saying is that whether that person is clean or ritually unclean, they still need to eat. And they are still a member of society. They're still a member of Israel, whether they're ritually clean or not. What happens if something happens and through no fault of their own, they become ritually unclean? Well, he still provides for them. That's the thing to remember. He takes care. If he cares about the sparrow that falls out of its nest, right? How much more do you think that he cares about you? Said the lilies, consider the lilies. They do not toil and neither do they spin. But look at the way that they're dressed. Look at the way that they're arrayed. They're beautiful. But they don't worry about it. Right? And he said, but for the same way, we shouldn't worry about it. We shouldn't worry about it. So he will take care of us. Even when we think we don't have anything in the cupboard, when we are concerned about, I got to pay this light bill, he has it under control. Let him have it. Give it to him. Don't carry it around. Don't tote it around, because if you do, guess what? We're putting our spin on it. And when we do that, then we're getting mixed up in it, right? And we're saying, hey, I can do this better than you can. And that's one thing that we really don't need to do. One thing that I had written down here is not only about the food aspect of it, But we also need to remember that those who are clean, those who are upright, those that are yashar, right? We need to remember that everybody, whether you are clean or unclean, that the free gift of eternal life through Yahushua's shed blood has been extended to us. We've done nothing to deserve it. And we could never do anything to repay him for that sacrifice. There's nothing that we could do. But just in the same way that he provided for them then, he provides for us now. He provided for them physically then. He provides for us physically now. He provided a way of escape for them then. He provided a way for us now. Now, it's true that the sacrifices they made at the tabernacle could never forgive them of their sin. He just kind of covered it over, okay? But now, through his son, Yahushua HaMashiach, right? Through his sacrifice, through his shed blood, now we have a way to be forgiven. And through that forgiveness, attain eternal life. So, I mean, how's that for providing for you? How is that for providing for us? Incredible. Absolutely incredible. All right. So we're going to go ahead and pick back up where we left off. Let's go to verse number 16 in chapter 12, please.
Only the blood you do not eat, pour it on the earth like water.
Okay, so here he's talking about, that when you do your sacrifices, when you do, and you eat what you want to eat, as long as it's actually food, okay? When you eat what you want to eat, that the stipulation is that, you don't consume the blood with it. All right, because life is in the blood. And we know that's a big thing. Let's go to Genesis 9 and 4, please.
Genesis 9 and verse 4. But the flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat.
Okay, so like he said, we're not supposed to eat blood. So if you're getting your steaks rare, you need to start cooking them things a little bit more. We don't need to be eating bloody meat because it's not what we're supposed to do. It's the biggest thing is it's just not good for us. It's not a healthy thing. It's not a good practice. There are a lot of diseases that are communicable through the blood. Okay. And if you should happen to have some sort of lesion in your mouth or in your stomach or your esophagus or whatever, then those pathogens they can get in there. And it's just not a good thing, okay? There are internal cooking temperatures on things for a reason, all right? And that's what we should do. Now, that being said, there is one blood that we are free to partake in. All right. Let's go to John 6, 53 and 54.
John 6, 53 and 54. Then Yahushua said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, except ye eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, ye have no life in you. Whosoever eateth my flesh and drinketh my blood hath eternal life, and I will raise him up at the last day.
Now, let's make sure we understand he wasn't talking about actually, okay? That was what threw a lot of them off because they were like, oh my gosh, he's telling us to do this and that, And that's why a lot of times, so many times I read through the scriptures and I'm just like, what are you talking about? How can you be so dense that you don't understand what he's saying? Understood, though, we've had a long time to clarify things, versus what they did when it first started happening. Um, but we have to remember that, we've got to take on him, right? We've got to take him on. We've got to take on his blood. We've got to grow into his stature. We have to be, we have to. This is what we're talking about when I say you got to get the word down in you, right? You got to eat it. It's got to become part of you, and that's part of this whole thing. The blood of bulls and goats is not what we need, right? The blood of Yahushua, that is what we need, because without it, there's no hope for any of us. Amen? There's no hope for any of us without his shed blood. So we have to remember that, this is being used in a figurative sense, right? It's not literal, it's being used figuratively. He's saying, if you don't get me down in you, right? Get me down inside of you, then you're not going to get this thing. What does it say? Okay, so like I said, when it comes to what we eat physically, we are not to eat, bloody steaks. I saw a thing not too long ago. It was like a fluoroscope, so kind of like an X-ray, but it was for the soft tissues. And it was an Asian person who had eaten undercooked pork for 30 years. And all of on the scope, they were doing their thorax, okay? All of their organs were full of parasites because of eating undercooked pork for 30 years. If I ever find that picture again, I'm going to get it to y'all so you can see it. The scope showed like white marks. They were just everywhere, and it looked like not like polka dots or anything, but I mean, you could definitely, it was like lines, like stripes, like, but it was from eating undercooked pork for 30 years. If I can find that picture, I'm going to make sure y'all see it. But again, that's why we're not supposed to eat this kind of stuff. We're not supposed to take this in, right? When we take in that which is not fit for consumption, not fit for use, we begin to exhibit those signs in our bodies. Okay. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you, I'm not in the greatest health. Okay. I have several conditions. However, parasites from eating undercooked pork is not one of them. All right. I will say one thing. A lot of people, when I tell them how old I am, they don't believe me. They're like, there's no way you can be in your 50s. Oh, yeah, I can show you my driver's license. I used to know a guy from Venezuela that he was in his mid 60s and he looked like he was about 34. And none of us believed him. We're like, man, you're out of your mind. He said, no, he showed us his driver's license. He was 64 years old or something, but he looked so young. You know what I mean? But it's because he took care of himself. And so anyway, like I said, when we got to remember, when we go to the restaurant, and they ask you how you want your meat cooked, well done's the way to go. They may gripe at you, or they may say, oh, well, we can't guarantee it's going to be. Well, you know what? That's fine. I'm paying for it. So that's how I want it. But we got to know that we're not supposed to eat undercooked meat. Okay. And a lot of it, again, it has to do with the whole disease aspect of it, But the second part is he just told us don't do it, right? And we just read about it there in the book of Genesis, right? Said that you're not to eat it with the blood because the life is in the blood. So we're supposed to get rid of that. We don't eat that. Verse 28, please. And hold on before you. And in verses 23 through 25, he goes back and he says it again. So he's mentioned it twice right here in just a very short span of time. So again, I don't know if this was a problem that Israel had, but I'm pretty sure that it's an issue that some of the people around them, the pagan peoples, did have. There were even some rituals that they would do to their Elohim that would involve consuming blood and stuff like that. So again, another way of keeping us safe, keeping us away from that kind of mess. All right. So verse 28, please.
Guard and obey all these words which I command you, that it might be well with you and your children after you forever, when you do what is good and right in the eyes of Yahweh your Elohim.
Okay, so here's in Hebrew, he's saying Shamar v'shamat kol devarim, right? Keep, guard, protect, and listen. Hear all these words. Kol devarim, right? All these words. So he's saying, don't just keep what you want, and don't just keep the things you like and get rid of the stuff you don't like. That's not what he said. He said, keep all these words and guard them, protect them. Where are we supposed to hide the word? We're supposed to hide it where? In our heart, right? Because out of the abundance of the heart, what happens? The mouth speaks, right? And we also know that with the mouth, confession is made unto salvation. So if we have the word in our hearts, if we have nothing, but if we have the word, then guess what's going to come out? The word. If we have the word in there, what's going to come out when we get angry? Hopefully, it better be the word if it's really down in there, right? There better be some blessings in there instead of some curses, right? He said, pray for those who despitefully use you, right? So if I have an enemy and I'm upset with them, what do I need to do? I need to pray for them, right? Because the old man, he tells me what? You ought to just cuss him out and show him how to cow ate the cabbage. You know what I mean? That's what, but that's not what the word says. The word says that I'm supposed to bless this person. And it's hard, but that's where we need to be. This is what we were talking about with character, right? What were you saying, Dad? Exactly. Like we talked about last night. If I want blessings to come back, then that means I even need to bless that person who I don't really like very much. And when I say bless them, I don't mean bless them out. Okay. we down here in the South. I don't mean bless them out. I just mean we need to bless that person. Okay. So let's remember, we need to guard and to keep all of his words, not just what we like, not just the things that appeal to us, not just the things that tickle our ears, right? Not just the things that say, hey, you're gonna be blessed. You know what I mean? You got to remember, we can be cursed too. Didn't we talk about that in the very first part of this, right? All right, verse 30, please.
Guard yourself that you are not ensnared to follow them after they are destroyed from before you, and that you do not inquire about their mighty ones, saying, how did these nations serve their mighty ones? And let me do so too.
See, the scriptures say if we go chasing after that kind of stuff, we're going to get snared by that. Okay, and that's the word that it uses, is the snared, right? We're going to get trapped. And it's going to, it can kill us. Maybe not physically, but spiritually, yes. Okay, so we need to make sure that we're not going around saying, oh, I wonder how these Mayans did this and did that and blah, blah, blah. There's nothing wrong with, like, for example, with their science, because the idea of terrace gardening or terrace farming and aquaponics came from the Mayans and the Aztecs. Those are good technologies. Helps with erosion, creates a circular food chain, you know, you can control what you're putting in your body. Those are good things. But we sure don't need to know how they did their sun worship and copy their sacrificing of human beings and stuff, right? We don't need to do that. So again, he's given us everything that we need here in the scriptures. He's given us how to walk, what to do, what to say, what to eat, you know, he's given us everything that we need. Told us about our Messiah, right? It's like when he told them, you know, just to step backwards for just a minute, when he told them, you know, put the blessings on Mount Gerizim and put the curses on Mount Ebal. Remember when he said that a few verses ago, or even a chapter ago? Well, if you look at the rest of that verse, he says, you know, which is over towards the way of the sun, over towards this way as you pass by. He was very specific about that, right? Because he wanted us to know where these blessings and curses were supposed to be. Well, he's just as specific, if not more so, with his house rules, the way we're supposed to walk, what we're supposed to say, what day we're supposed to meet, what holidays we're supposed to celebrate, right? He's very specific with all of that. The thing is, let's just like it says in Revelations, to him that has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the assemblies, right? But we've got to have an ear to hear these things. You know, if it's not in you to receive this message, it's going to sound like so much gobbledygook. Let's be honest. But the point is, there's nothing that we're telling you that you can't see for yourself in this book. It's all right here. Okay? So let's remember, we need to make sure that we don't get snared, right? We don't get trapped by the things that we see around us. Now, here's another thing. It says by their Elohim. What if that person's got a whole lot of money and they got their money by an illegal fashion? We don't need to be going and finding out about that, because the scriptures tell us that where it's talking about the parable of the sower, right? That the cares of this world and riches, right? The deceitfulness of riches can cause us to lose our root, can cause us to get plucked up, right? And what happens when we cease to become fruitful? We become like that vine that gets pruned, right? It gets cut down, and where does it go there? It gets thrown on the pile where the fire is. Do you see how the patterns work in the scriptures? We know that there's a lake of fire for Hasatan and his angels, right? So once again, the scriptures interpret themselves. And it's not such a leap of logic. But like I said, let's make sure that, you know, because he has no problem with giving us wealth. He said that he gives us the power to get wealth. He makes us able to do that, right? But the thing that we have to remember is we can't make our riches, we can't make our cars, we can't make our house, we can't make all that stuff our Elohim. Because once we do, then we've been snared. And now we've got our eyes off the prize. And what happens when we take our eyes off of him? We begin to sink, right? And how long does it take before we're in too deep and he can't pull us back out? Do you see what I'm saying? So we need to make sure that when we're, you know, he's not against us having stuff, but we can't take anything and put it before him. Cannot do it. All right. Verse 32.
All the words I'm commanding you, guard, to do it. Do not add to it or take away from it.
Well, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? All right. So he said, don't add to it. Don't take away from it. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this is probably about the third or fourth time that he's told them throughout the past few weeks. Don't add to it. Don't take away from it. Let's go to Revelations 22, 18 and 19. Because the scriptures tell us that there's a promise. You know, we've been talking about blessings and cursings, right? Well, there's a promise made to those who add to and take away.
Revelations 22, 18 and 19. For I testify unto every man that heareth the words of the prophecy of this book. If any man shall add unto these things, Yahweh shall add unto him the plagues that are written in this book. And if any man shall take away from the words of the book of this prophecy, Yahweh shall take away his part out of the book of life and out of the holy city and from the things which are written in this book.
So if we add to, he's going to add to us these plagues and diseases and stuff. If we take away from it, we throw away the things we don't like and we keep the stuff that we do, right? Let me step back real quick. If we add to it a bunch of man-made junk, oh, you have to wash your hands 10 times and do this and all this. If we add a bunch of that stuff to it and try to call it scripture, right? It says that he's going to add to us a bunch of plagues and all kind of other stuff. But if we try to take away, we say, we don't like that Old Testament. Let's get rid of that. Let's just keep this New Testament that's so good, and we'll get rid of that old God, and we'll stay with this Jesus because he's nice. We'll stay with him. He wasn't too nice when he was whooping them money changers, was he? But when we do that, the scriptures tell us that he's going to do what? He's going to take away our name out of the book of life and out of the city and out of the holy thing. He's going to take us out. Let's go to John 1 and 14, please.
John chapter 1, verse 14. And the word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth.
Okay, Brother Tommy, you said just a little while ago that you're really enjoying being part of this now, because now you're learning stuff, and you're learning stuff every week. Is that safe to say? Okay. You're learning. And the more that you learn, the more beautiful this message, it becomes real, doesn't it? It becomes far more real than I think any of us ever thought it was years ago. You know, this is a living document, right? This is a living word. Well, I want you to hold on to your hat because you may flip your lid when you hear this. But when we do this, when we add to the word or when we take away from it, okay, then what we're saying is that we are greater than him. And when we do that, it does what? It changes the image of his son, who is the word made flesh. See what I'm saying? That's why it's so heinous. Because when we change his word, we change his son. We've talked for months. When it's written down, we can't change it. We can't alter it. We can't append it. We can't amend it. It's done. It's like, you remember old Yul Brynner? So let it be written. So let it be done. Okay. He couldn't change it. That's the gospel according to Cecil B. All right. But the point is, you know, even who was it? Was it Artaxerxes? Yeah, it was Artaxerxes. The thing was written in there about Mordecai and all, you know what I mean? And Esther said, you know, it's been written. There's nothing I can do. I can't change it. Once it's been written, it can't. Well, it's the same thing with the Father's word. What makes us think that we can change it? Because when we do, we may feel better about ourselves or whatever. But what we've done now is we've said, hey, I'm bigger than you are. And when we do that, we change his son. It's not just it's not just words on a page. We're changing everything that points us to and explains that it's much more than what we think. It's not just a translational thing. It changes the whole picture. And we know from previous parshas that if we go changing the picture of his son, right? We create his son in our image. When we do that, well, we've just turned everything upside down. And it becomes something that's unrecognizable to him. And believe me, the Father knows his son. And if he sees where we've added to or taken away, he knows it ain't his. That don't belong to me. It's like where he said, depart from me. I never knew you. We don't want to hear that, do we? We don't want to hear that. Well, why would he never know us? We may have served our entire lives in the trenches, but we've taken his word and we've changed it to suit us. And here's the thing. Why doesn't he know us? Because we don't look like his son. Because we've changed it. That's why it's such a bad thing. It's such a horrible, horrible thing to try to add to or take away from. And I can't express enough how bad that is. You know? So to me, it makes a whole lot more sense just to follow it as it is, right? Do the right thing, walk the right way. It's a whole lot better to do that. Because none of us wants to get there and say, hear him say, I don't know you. Who are you? Why are you even here? All right. Let's see here. So chapter 13, we're just going to talk about chapter 13. Chapter 13 it's a short one, but it talks about if a prophet pops up among your people or a dreamer of dreams and he gives you a sign or a wonder, and if it comes to pass, and he tells you, hey, let's go serve other Elohim. Let's go serve this one over here or this one over here or any number of those ones that they had on the street corners of Jerusalem. Let's go serve this one or the stars or the moon or the sun or whatever. If he tells you that, the scriptures say, don't listen to it. Right? Even if the miracle happens, don't listen to it. Why? It says here, because Yahweh is actually proving you. He wants to see what you're going to do. All right. Let's keep in mind, and we all seen it in the church. Let's just be straight up, okay? We've all seen it in the church. Not everybody who claims that they're of Yahweh is of Yahweh. Amen? I know plenty of TV preachers got in trouble for all kinds of stuff. I know plenty of regular preachers who got in trouble for all kinds of stuff. Okay? So not everybody who says that they are of Yahweh is of Yahweh. Let's go to 1 John 4:1.
First John 4:1. Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits whether they are of Yahweh, because many false prophets have gone out into the world.
Okay, so here's the thing. If they're of Yahweh, they're going to do the things of Yahweh, right? Not only in the pulpit or up on the stage or at the bema, but they're going to do them in everyday life. Because we do what comes out of our heart. So, if they're telling you that they're of Yahweh, but they're out there carousing and down there on Bourbon Street and doing, that doesn't set a very, that's kind of contradictory, isn't it? Okay, that's what we call hypocrisy. They're saying one thing, but they doing another, right? So that's the thing. We got to know that and we got to pay attention. Remember, we talked about discernment not too long ago? We got to watch. We got to discern. People are watching us. We got to watch other people too. Would you agree with that, Rebbe? We got to be watching them. Because not everybody out there is looking to do good for you. Right? What did they tell Jeremiah? Perhaps we'll catch him. Perhaps we can catch him in a fault. Do you see what I'm saying? People are doing that kind of stuff. There's people that want to see you fall. They want to see you fall on your face so they can run back and say, see, I told you that he wasn't I told you that he wasn't what he's cracked up to be. I told you that. All right, let's go to Matthew 12 and 33.
Matthew 12, verse 33. Either make the tree good and his fruit good, or else make the tree corrupt and his fruit corrupt, for the tree is known by his fruit.
So they say, you'll know a tree by the fruit that it bears, right? So if you're, if you're a tree and you're proclaiming to be full of good fruit and good work, but your fruit is rotten, what's that say? That you rooted in the wrong place, right? We read it last night about bitter and sweet water, right? You can't get olives off of a fig tree. And you can't get oranges off an apple tree. So, like I said, if I see a tree with oranges on it, I'm going to think that's an orange tree. That's how I know what kind of tree it is. So if you're putting out rotten fruit, or if you're putting out the wrong fruit, then it's uncertain to whom you belong. Another thing about this is it doesn't matter. You talk about not everybody that says that they're of Yahweh is of Yahweh. It doesn't matter, even if they're a member of your family. Okay? We can't follow them. Go to Mark 3, 31 through 35.
Mark 3, 31 through 35. There came then his brother and his mother, and standing without, sent unto him, calling him. And the multitude said about him, and they said unto him, Behold, thy mother and thy brethren without seek for thee. And he answered them, saying, Who is my mother or my brother?
To 35, yes.
And he looked round about on them which sat about him, and said, Behold, my mother and my brethren. For whosoever shall do the will of Yahweh, the same is my brother and my mother and my sister and my mother.
So it goes a whole lot deeper than the blood that you got going through your veins. It goes a whole lot deeper than the family name. Goes a whole lot deeper than the DNA, right? They told him, they said, hey, your mother and your brothers are out here looking for you. But he was about his father's business, wasn't he? And he said, well, I love the answer. Who's my mother and my brother? He said, you see all these? The ones that are doing the will of my father, those are my mother and my brothers and my sisters and my cousins and my in-laws and outlaws and whatever. That's who's my real family. And so that's the thing. We can't follow it. It doesn't. We're going to lose. We're going to lose family. Right? Let's be straight up. You walk this way, you're going to lose family. It's not that you stop loving them. It's that they don't understand you. So they become confused. They get angry. They get scared, whatever their reason is. They'll drop you like a hot potato. And this is your family. Family's going to be the one who hurts you the worst, right? As they said, where did you get these wounds in your hands? He said, these are the wounds that I got in the house of my friends, right? Your family hurts you quicker than anybody. And I don't know why that is, but they will. But who's our real family? The ones who's walking this thing out, the ones who's about our Father's business. Okay? Let's go to Luke 14 and 26.
Luke 14, 1 through 6.
No.
No.
14 and 26.
Oh, I'm sorry. Luke 14 and 26. And if any man come to me and hate not his father or mother and wife and children and brethren and sisters, yea, in his own life also, he cannot be my disciple.
Okay. So let me clarify for you what he is saying here. Okay. He is not telling you to hate your mother and your father, not in our understanding. He is not telling you to hate your brothers and your sisters he's not saying that. Okay. What the word means is it means to love less. So, what is he telling us? He is saying, if you don't love me more than you love your father and your mother, then you're not worthy of the kingdom. We've got to love him 125%. I love my mother and I love my father and my sisters, my brothers, and I would do anything for any of y'all. I would lay my life down for you right now and not think twice about it. Okay? And I believe y'all know me, and I believe y'all know that is true. Okay? There's two things in this world that you don't touch. All right? Number one is my family. All right? Second one is my pimento cheese. We're going to have a problem if you touch that. Okay? But no, seriously. You don't touch my family. And that means literally or figuratively. Do not put your mouth on my family, because it's going to get rough in whatever county we're in. I promise you. You thought Katrina was bad. It's going to get double rough. All right? But I would do anything for any one of y'all. But do not think for a moment that if Yahushua walked through that door and told me, hey, you got to get up and come with me and leave the rest of these here, I'm going with him. Right? And it's not because I don't love y'all, but I got to be about my Father's business. Right? So that's the thing. We got to be at that point in our life. We've got to be at that point in our walk. He told Abraham, get up from among your kindred, and I'm going to send you to a place you don't even know where it is. Did Abraham hem and haw? No. He said, all right, point me in the right direction. I'll go. And he did. So that's the thing. We got to be the same way. So, just for clarification, I'm not telling you that you need to hate your family. You just need to love them a little bit less than you do Yahushua. That's it. Because he's the top, right? The Father, then you've got Yahushua, and then you've got, he's the top. We also need to make sure that we know that it's really him talking to. That's number one. But that goes back to the discernment thing, You're not going to tell you to do anything that's against what the word says to do. All right, so chapter 14, verses 1 through 2, it talks about prohibitions against practices of the nations that were around them. It tells you, don't cut yourself for the dead. Don't shave between your eyes. That shaving between your eyes, that's kind of weird. What it's talking about is like, don't shave the front of your head. There are still certain practices that are they're still performed by certain Eastern cultures. Okay, there are those that will shave the fronts of their heads to about the middle here as a sign of mourning. There are those who will cut themselves as a sign of mourning. Okay, there are those that flagellate themselves. Right, they whip themselves and I mean, just all kinds of horrible misfigurings, right? But we also have to understand that in the life of a follower of Yahweh, he is not going to ask you to disfigure yourself. because disfigurement is often, and that's why when you see all these people that got ear gauges and bifurcated tongues and all these implants, dermal implants, all this kind of stuff, that practice is, those types of practices are always tied to demonic forces. So if it's of Yahweh, he's never going to ask you to, put things under your skin or do, all that kind of stuff. And we'll see later, I guess it's next week in chapter 19, we're going to talk about a few other things. But like I said, he told us that we are supposed to do what? We're supposed to be separate. We're supposed to be holy. Right? Let's go to 2 Corinthians 6, 14 through 17.
Second Corinthians 6, 14 through 17. Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers, for what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness, and what communion hath light with darkness, and what concord hath the Messiah with Belial, or what part hath he that believeth with an infidel? And what agreement hath the temple of Yahweh with idols? For ye are the temple of the living Elohim. As Yahweh hath said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people.
So here's the thing. If you got a friend who's a Buddhist, or a friend that's a Muslim, or a friend that's a Hindu or whatever, okay, you can be friends with that person, right? Walk this thing out in front of, but don't go to service with them. Well, there's a lot of people that do that kind of stuff, but don't do that. You have no place being in a mosque. All right? You're a child of Yahweh. You have no place you have no place in a mosque. There's nothing in there for you. Or in a Buddhist temple. Or in a church. Hello? Make some people mad, but I'm telling you, when you leave the church, you don't need to go back in. Because you remember what we talked about? Getting snared by their false Elohim? Okay? He said, come out from amongst her and be ye separate. Okay? Go to Revelations 18 and 4.
Revelations 18 and 4. And I heard another voice from heaven crying, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. Okay? Because if you go back in there, you're gonna get caught up in the plagues. Right? Jeremiah 10, verses 1 and 2. What's it say there? Jeremiah 10, 1 and 2. Hear ye the word which Yahweh speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. And thus saith Yahweh, learn not the way of the heathen, and do not be dismayed by the signs of the heavens, for the heathen are dismayed at them. Okay, so separate yourself from that. You don't need to be there. You don't need to go with your buddy to the mosque. You don't need to be going to sunrise service on Easter. You don't need to be going to the Christmas play. All right? You don't need to be doing all that stuff. Huh? That's what I'm saying. Any of that kind of stuff. You don't need, you got no place there. Right? Come out of her. Be ye separate. What did Shaul say? He said, follow me as I follow Moshiach. Did Moshiach do any of that stuff? No. So why would we? All right. Verse 3 says, you shall not eat any abominable thing. Okay, so abominable. When it talks about something abominable, it's talking about things that are sacrificed to idols. Okay. Anything that's disgusting. Like, to me, there's nothing more disgusting in the world than what's inside of an oyster shell. To me, when I look at that, I didn't have to have the Torah tell me don't eat that, because when I saw it, I'm like, that is disgusting. And I am not putting that in my mouth. That is gross. All right. It's just disgusting to me.
All right. So I knew, me personally, I knew I wasn't going to eat that. But we don't need to be eating anything that is abominable. Okay. Anything disgusting, anything that is, anything that is, you know, I don't know that there's, you know, as it was back then, food that had been sacrificed to idols or whatever. But the point is, we need to be very careful because food is where we get hung up at, right? All right. Verses 4 through 20 of chapter 14. This is where it talks about what we can eat and what we are not to eat. This is one place. The other place is in Leviticus, right? Chapter 11. So here he kind of just goes back and he tells them, look, you can eat these things, but don't eat these others. Let's go to verse 8. And Rebbitzin, I want you to read verse 8 for me, if you don't mind.
And the pig is unclean for you because it has a split hoof, but does not chew the cud. You do not eat their flesh or touch dead carcass.
So it is unclean to you. You do not eat their flesh or touch their dead. So how do we not understand? It's the most plentiful meat on earth because it's the cheapest, right? But the thing is, they have a job, and their job is to clean the earth and eat the dead things and do all that. That's their job. They're not food. Okay. We are not supposed to eat things. This goes back to verse 3. We are not supposed to eat things that are not food. People want to say, oh, well, Paul said, if you pray over it, you can't take what Yahweh has cursed and bless it. You just can't do it. Right? And that's the thing. He said food. All right. If you look at these things, these animals, he tells them, these are not food for you. So they never were intended as food in the first place. So it seems very clear to me, right? There's nowhere in the scriptures where he says, hey, you know that thing, I changed my mind. You guys eat what you want to. That was a bad call. I made a mistake. Bacon's really good, so you guys should go ahead and eat it. He never said anything like that. Okay? He says he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He does not change, right? So if he said don't eat it, then he means don't eat it now. Pretty simple. Pretty simple. All right. Verse 21. Now, verse 21 is one of those ones that kind of confuses people. Verse 21, it talks about, not the first part, I'm talking about the second part. It says, don't eat anything that dies of itself. Okay. So if it drops dead out there in the stable, don't eat it. All right. Now you can give it to somebody, you can give it to a stranger, but don't eat it yourself. Okay. He also says that you're not supposed to boil a kid in his mother's milk. Now, Orthodox Judaism will tell you that means that you cannot eat meat and dairy together. And that is not what he's talking about at all. Okay. So eating milk and dairy together is probably not real good for your cholesterol. That's what I thought I said. I'm sorry. I got a little carried away. I apologize. But eating meat and dairy, like I said, may be not so good for your cholesterol. However, there's no prohibition against it. So what they are talking about here was a prosperity / fertility ritual that was very common in Canaan and in Egypt at the time. What they would do is they would take a female goat, they would milk it, they would bring the milk to a boil, they would take the kid that she had just had, boil it in that milk, and then they would eat the kid. And the reason for that was to try and bring some sort of prosperity and richness to their life. But it's cruel. It is honestly, when you think, it is horribly cruel. because then the mother becomes the vehicle of death for the child. It's cruel and inhumane. But that's the kind of stuff that they were seeing. And that's why he was telling them, don't do that kind of stuff. It goes back to Jeremiah where he said, do not learn the way of the heathen. You see? So it has nothing to do with eating a cheeseburger or drinking a glass of milk and, or eating a taco or that has cheese. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with kindness and getting junk out of our lives, getting pagan things out of our lives, getting superstition and nonsense out of our lives. That's what it has to do with. Got nothing to do with whether you drink a glass of milk with your cheese sandwich. Well, I'm just saying, it doesn't matter. You can eat a beef bologna sandwich with a piece of cheese on it, which I know you wouldn't do. I would all day long. But the point is, like I said, it's all about that. That's what it's not got nothing to do with food. All right. And then 22 through 29 talks about the third year tithe and taking care of those who are less fortunate than ourselves. And we have to remember that no matter how bad we think we have it, there's always somebody who's got it worse. Okay. So when we see that, we're supposed to help. If we can, we're supposed to help. All right. And that's what the third year tithe was all about. After, in the third year, you would collect grain and wheat and all that, and then you could sell it, right? Or you could give it to somebody who needed it or whatever, or you could sell it, turn it into money, right? And then go to Jerusalem or whatever. You could bring a bunch of people together, throw a huge party. Everybody celebrates. Everybody's having a great time. You could do that. But you had to make sure that you included servants and Levites and widows and the poor. And it's all about providing for people who don't have. Yeah, for those who are less fortunate than we are. Like I said, no matter how bad we think we've got it, there's always somebody who's worse off than we are. Chapter 15, verses 1 through 2, he talks about the 7-year release. So at the end of every 7 years, there was a release. If somebody owed you money, at the end of 7 years, you released them from that debt. Okay? That way it allowed everybody to be, kind of on equal footing. Verse 4 says, there shall be no poor among you, for Yahweh shall greatly bless you in the land that Yahweh your Elohim gives you for an inheritance to possess it. So, this is to continue this action of providing for the poor. This is to continue until we have no more poor people. But in Matthew 26 and 11, what did Yahushua say? Do what? That's where he said the poor, yeah, exactly. The poor, you'll always have the poor because they didn't do what they were supposed to, right? They didn't follow the 7th year Sabbath. They didn't follow the Jubilee. The Yovel. They didn't release people like they should have. But that's what Yahushua told him. He said, you'll always have the poor. And it's strictly because they didn't do what they were supposed to have done. Okay? So to this day, it's still in effect. All right? So let's remember, if we have somebody, we should always try to help somebody if we can. Okay? And don't think twice about what they're going to do with it. Oh, he's just going to use it, go buy beer or whatever. Well, that's on him, not you. You did your part. You know what I mean? And a lot of people, I remember one time I was with my grandmother and we were driving down Francis Street, and we came across this intersection, and there was a pretty shabby looking guy sitting on the corner. He was just sitting on, like, it was a cinder block fence. And I'll never forget, this made an indelible impression on me. My grandmother turned that car around and we went back to the house. We weren't about 2 blocks away. We went back to the house and she made that man a sack lunch. Made, had apple and a banana and some fruit, and she put a Coke and wrapped it up, and we took that man a lunch. And she handed it to me and she said, now y'all know this, my grandmother said it. She said, buddy, she said, roll that window down and give that man this lunch. I said, yes, ma'am. I rolled that window down and I said, sir. And he looked up for, I said, come here. He come over. I handed that man that lunch, and I'm talking about, you should have seen the tears come down his face. The scriptures say that we got to be careful, right? Because we never know. We may entertain angels unaware. Now, it would not have surprised me if we had gone back and that man wasn't there no more. She still would have, you know what I mean? But the point is, the look of gratitude on that man's face made an everlasting, indelible mark on my heart. Because I remember this man cried his eyes out over a bologna sandwich, an apple, a banana, a little bag of Fritos, and a Coke. And he was just, thank y'all so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And, my grandmother told him, she said, now go over there and sit down in the shade and eat your lunch. And, God bless you. You know what I mean? And we went on our way. But what if that man had been an angel and it was a test? Then what? And we had failed the test. Do you see what I'm saying? All right. We can't be worried about what that person's going to do with what we give them. Just give it. Okay? Don't worry about what they're going to do with it. Just give it. Verses 7 through 11, it talks about how we're supposed to treat each other. If there's a poor brother and he comes to us for help, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to tell him, hey, get out of here, you loser, go get a job. No, what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to open our hand wide. Not scrunch it up, make a fist out of it. We're supposed to open our hand wide and give him sufficient to his need. Right? It says, you shall open your hand wide unto him and shall surely lend him sufficient for his need, which he shall require. And right here in verse 9, beware that there is not a wicked thought in your wicked heart, saying, the 7th year, the year of release is at hand, and your eye be what? Evil against your poor brother. We talk about the evil eye. A lot of people think that it's a curse or a hex that somebody's put on you. No, what it is being stingy and not giving to a person who's in need. That's the evil eye. And it's doing it because you can't be moved to compassion for that person because you're too worried about yours, about your stuff. And that's not how we're supposed to be. Right? Like the tongue. We bless Yahweh, but then we curse our brother who's made in the similitude or made in the likeness of Yahweh. You see what I'm saying? That's not how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to treat each other good, and we're supposed to be there so that we can rely. We learn to rely on each other. All right? Verses 12 through 18, this is what it talks about if you have a Hebrew servant and the 7th year comes along and what you're supposed to do with him, right? You're supposed to let him go out, and you're supposed to give him animals and all kinds of stuff. You're supposed to send him out. Don't send him out empty-handed, right? But he may pull a trick on you, and he may say, hey, you know what? I love my master. And I don't want to go. You treated me good. Give me somewhere to stay. I want to stay here. And I'll work for you for the rest of my life. Well, then scriptures say that they would do what? They would take a awl, right? Stand him up against the doorpost of the house, put his head up against there, and then take a awl and drive it through his ear and pin him to the doorpost. Okay. So what that does, and this was something that was revealed to me a few months ago that I thought was really great because I'd never seen this before. But when that happens, you get a hole poked in you, you're going to bleed. Okay. When they did that, and I imagine it probably wasn't as sharp as it could be, when they did that, then his blood would become part of that door. His blood would become part of that household. It's the same thing with us, right? The blood of Yahushua has made us part of his household. Okay? So as long as that house stands, his blood will be a part of that house. Let's go to Isaiah 22 and 23.
Isaiah 22, verse 23. And I will fasten him as a nail in a sure place, and he shall be for a glorious throne to his father's house.
Let's go to Ezra 9 and 8. It starts with an E.
I thank you. It's just not in the same order as what we grew up with. Okay, Ezra 9 and 8. And now for a little space, grace has been shown from Yahweh our Elohim to leave us a remnant to escape and to give us a nail in his holy place, that our Elohim may lighten our eyes and give us a little reviving in our bondage.
Okay, so he wants to make us part of his house. He wants to make us a part of the heavenly temple. He said that he's going to in Revelations 3 and 12, Yahushua said that he's going to make us pillars or supports, right, in the temple of his El. So the word there that's used, the word is stulos, all right, which means a support. So the building stands. Why? Because all the supports are doing their job, right? And when we're all doing our job and we're all holding up our corner, when we're all working in the capacity as the support we're supposed to be, that helps to build the temple. That helps to build the kingdom. You see? And he said that he's going to give us a nail, right? A support. He's going to fix us into that place. And evermore will be. That's what we all want, right? He said that he's given us a sure place. So I think that's pretty cool. You know what I mean? You see a picture and then you see it again later, you know what I mean? That's how we study the word, right, Rebbe? We look for patterns, we look for pictures, we look for the 4 P's. We prove all things. We let the scriptures interpret themselves. These are all tools that we all have in our tool bags that sometimes I think we take for granted. Some folks don't know how to study just because they've never been taught. Y'all, we don't realize what a great set of tools that we've been handed. All right. And we should be so incredibly grateful for the things that we've been given freely, because there's not a lot of people that can understand the word the way that we do. Not a lot of people that can do that. Because we're not looking through doctrinal glasses. We're not looking through rose-colored glasses of dogma, right? We're looking through the glasses of the word. We're looking through spiritual eyes. And that's how we dissect. Okay. Verse 21, it talks about not sacrificing the lame or the blind. Okay. And the reason for this is because, again, it's an imperfect picture of his son Yahushua, right? And remember, Yahushua ran the money changers out, right? They were selling inferior animals. First of all, they were inferior sacrifices. Second of all, they were selling them on Shabbat. He said, "You made my father's house a den of thieves. Y'all need to get on out of here." Said he grabbed him up a rope and whooped the far out of him. So again, he's like, out of here. Let's go to Malachi 1, 7 and 8. One of my favorites.
Malachi 1, 7 and 8. Ye offer polluted bread upon mine altar, and ye say, wherein have we polluted thee? In that ye say, the table of Yahweh is contemptible.
Hold on for just a second. So if they were to take the table of showbread, for example, and leave that bread on there until it got moldy and nasty, do you think that would be acceptable? I tell you no. That would not be acceptable. That's why they had to change it out every week, right? They had to put new bread in every week, because if they left it, it'd get moldy and gross. That's not going to be acceptable. Okay, go ahead and do verse 8, please.
And if ye offer the blind for a sacrifice, is it not evil? And if ye offer the lame and the sick, is it not evil? Offer it now to thy governor. Will he be pleased with thee, or accept thy person, saith Yahweh of hosts?
So if an earthly man ain't going to be happy with it, I guarantee you that Yahweh ain't going to be happy with it. You know, earthly man said, "Why did you bring me this three-legged goat? Why did you bring me this fish with two heads? Yeah. Why did you bring me this inferior product?" He's not going to be happy with that. Be like that fish on The Simpsons that had the three eyes. So if an earthly man's not going to be happy with it, the Heavenly Father sure ain't going to be happy with it. You know? And then verse 23, again, he talks about don't eat the blood. Pour it out on the ground. This is the third time, sir. Verse 22.
15:22. Eat it within your gates, the unclean and the clean alike, as the gazelle and as the deer.
Well, it says here, it says, you eat it within your gates, the unclean and the clean person shall eat it alike as the roebuck, as the hart. So again, there's no reason for people to get confused or to come up with, they come up with all kinds of stuff. But you got to read it. You can't just go off of what your preacher says. You got to read it. Got to read it for yourself. Okay. And then chapter 16, it's basically a recap of the feast days. So verses 1 through 8, they talk about Passover and unleavened bread. Go to 1 Corinthians 5, 7, and 8.
First Corinthians 5.
Turn on your mic.
Purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. For even the Messiah, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. Therefore let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice or wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth.
Okay, so again, here's Shaul, right? This is after Messiah has already gone back to the Father. But he's saying, let us keep the feast. So to me, that doesn't sound like it's been done away with. Does that sound like it has been to you? I don't think so. He's saying, let us keep it. Let's observe it. Let's do it. But let's make sure that we get out this leaven of malice, right? Let's go into it with a clear mind. Because I guarantee you, when you celebrate Passover, you need to be doing it with a clear mind, right? With a clear heart, with a clear conscience. We were commanded to celebrate this perpetually, forever. Verse 9 talks about Pentecost. Verse 10 talks about Sukkot. Verse 15, go ahead and read 15.
For 7 days you shall celebrate a festival to Yahweh your Elohim in the place which Yahweh chose, because Yahweh your Elohim blesses you in all your increase, in all the work of your hands, and you shall be only rejoicing.
Okay, so when you look at it in, not in the Hallelujah scriptures, because when you look at it in the King James, it says 7 days shall you keep a solemn feast. So you remember when I told you that sometimes there's words used in the King James that don't really mean what they mean to us. So when we think a solemn feast, we would think, oh, it's very sad, very calm, very sedate, right? Very, oh, you have to be very reverent, very respectful. Don't get loud. Don't say. That is far from what the word is here. Okay. So the word that's being used here is the word tachog. All right. So tachog, it comes from the word chag, which means a festival, right? But tachog means to rejoice loudly, to celebrate, literally to be giddy is what tachog means. So the thing is, when we're celebrating these feasts, it's like I said earlier, we're to look at these feasts as a joy, not as a chore. Oh man, I got to do this dumb going and sitting in these tent for a week and all this. You know what I mean? You know, I don't want to have to do all that. That's not how we're supposed to go into it, right? That's the thing. The verse 15, it talks about a solemn feast, but when we look at the word, it means that we're supposed to celebrate. We're supposed to be loud and giddy and just carefree because we're with y'all's people. And guess what else? Scriptures tell us that he walks through the center of the camp. So we need to be rejoicing because he's there. It's like the song, right? Who's in the camp? Okay. So verse 16 also talks about 3 times in a year that the men are supposed to come up. That is unleavened bread, Shavuot, and Sukkot. These are the 3 times in a year that all the men are supposed to come up. And when we come up, fellas, we're not supposed to come up empty-handed. All right? There's a lot that goes into putting these feasts on. All right? So, fellas, guys, brothers, we've all got to do our part. All right? Just like what we talked about, being a support, a pillar in his temple, we've got to hold up our corner. All right? Whether that's with work or money or a little of both or whatever. Okay? We've got it's incumbent upon us to make the feast a success. The women work plenty hard. Don't get me wrong. I'm not taking anything away because it's hard to get these schedules and these menus and do all this cooking and all this. But without all that, there ain't very many happy people because guess what? The commodes don't work and there's no showers and there ain't no food. And you see what I'm saying? So we've all got to work and we've got to do our part to make it a success. All right. So the other thing that I want to say to us is if the Old Testament has been done away with, it kind of makes it hard to keep the commandments because these are commanded feasts, correct? Now, there's some that are not commanded, but these are. So how can we keep commanded feasts if they've been done away with? You can't. So it should let you know, right? Well, if you did away with, then you wouldn't even know how to count the days. So it's not even a point of what to do. It even becomes when to do it. Because the calendar would be off. His timetable would be off. We wouldn't know. We'd be celebrating Passover in October. Yeah, there's a lot of people doing all kinds of weird stuff like these lunar folks. They end up all over the place, don't they? Anyway, let's remember that we've got feasts that are rapidly approaching. Okay? We all need to work together to make them a success. And we need to make sure that when we go into them, that we're not doing it with begrudgingly, that we're not doing it with, oh man, I don't want to do this. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, that old Alicia is going to be there, boy. She's going to complain about everything. And the salt is too hot. And yeah, I'm picking with you because when you first came here, sis. But the point is, yeah, she liked them radishes. We had to make sure we got radishes for her this year. But all jokes aside, I mean, they're rapidly approaching. So let's all get in there and let's enjoy it. And let's work together. No drama, please. We have enough of that every day. All right. You get your feelings hurt, keep it to yourself. All right. Just, pray through it. Everybody gets their toes stepped on every now and again. It happens to everybody. All right. But the point is, like I said, these aren't our feasts. These are Yahweh's feasts. Remember, he said, your new moons and your feast days are an abomination to me. But these are his. And we'll know it as, Leviticus 23 laid it all out for us, right? These are my feast days. And that's what we're talking about right here. So like I said, let's work together to make these fast coming feast days, make them the best ones yet. We had a great time last year, didn't we? It was fantastic last year. Well, let's make this one even better. I know it's going to be even better for Sister Vicky because she's going to have her new husband with her. Going to be completely different for Brother Tommy because he ain't never seen none of this stuff. I promise you, brother, we're going to treat you so many ways. You're going to have to like at least one of them. Okay. Anyway, we love y'all. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. That's going to do it from our Parsha today. We're going to go ahead and do our abbreviated Havdalah, and then we'll close everything out. But anyway, again, we love you. Appreciate you. I hope and pray that the word has been helpful for you today, that you have learned. That's my biggest hope and my biggest prayer is that the things that I bring are able to help you in some way. So anyway, we love you. Thank you so much.